Hello, my friends. This is Lynda Lippin, and welcome to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Hello, everybody. It's Lynda here, and we are back again for yet another episode of the Pilates Goddess podcast. And today is kind of extra special for me because my friend Patricia Hayes is with us. Now, I met Patricia online.
Yep.
In a women's networking group that neither one of us are in anymore, but that obviously we found very valuable while we were there. And she and I immediately connected in our networking pod meetings. We have actually met each other in person now when
Yay!
Patricia was here in New York with her daughter, when her daughter's dance performance was happening at Lincoln Center. And I'm going to go through Patricia's biography. And once we get through that, you are going to understand exactly why Patricia is on the podcast today and why it is so important, especially for the majority of Pilates teachers who are women, to really listen to and absorb, I think, some of the lessons that we're going to be talking about today and some of the situations that we'll discuss. So Patricia V. Hayes is a licensed attorney who serves as an executive advisor, career empowerment coach, and authentic networking strategist. She has actually already been on my lives talking about networking and strategy. I have also gone live in Patricia's groups, talking about, again, the importance of niching and empowerment and connection. Yes. Patricia guides professionals and entrepreneurs to take empowered action to build sustainable, authentic networks and professional relationships as they up-level their careers and achieve their professional goals. She's the owner of PVH Consulting Group, a strategy consulting and leadership development firm. Now, Patricia has served in senior leadership roles at the local, regional, and state levels. She has been a senior advisor to a state senator, lieutenant governor, commissioner of education, and university system chancellor, and was the first African American and first female vice chancellor at Texas State University for the system. She is a passionate advocate and community leader committed to issues affecting education, child abuse awareness and prevention, workforce development, and women's empowerment. She has served on numerous community boards and committees. In 2022, January, she was elected president of Launchpad Job Club of Austin, which is a networking support and job lead sharing organization that's supporting professionals in their job search. She continues to serve as a board member of Catholic Charities of Central Texas, the Austin Artist Project, on the Impact Austin Strategic Advisory Council, and the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee of the Girl Scouts of Central Texas, which they need. She is a graduate of UT Austin and of Pepperdine University Law School, and she is married and a proud mom of two. Welcome, Patricia.
Oh my gosh. Thanks, Lynda, for letting me be here. Oh my gosh. I'm always listening. I'm like, who is that person?
Did I? Well, and this is actually a great opening, right, for the discussion that we want to have today, because oftentimes as women,
yes,
especially when we hear other people introduce us and talk about our achievements, we almost can't believe that we achieved them.
Yes.
Or that it's us.
Well, and the thing is, I know, I'm like, that's the abbreviated version. So it's, that's a whole other conversation about time and boundaries and whatever. We may get to touch a little bit of that, but yeah, how we just put ourselves out there and then kind of don't recognize it when we hear it brought back to us because we're just too busy, with our head down and grinding things out.
Right. Because, because women do tend to do the majority of the work. Let's just face it.
Well, I'm not going to argue with you on that one.
Now, professionally, because you've as you've come up in the ranks as a woman, as a black woman, as a black woman in the South, um, I'm sure that you've had a whole host of interesting
Oh,
experiences
yes.
and issues
Oh, yes.
that you've had to work through. But of course, all of them now inform a lot of the work that you do now, right, in your strategic work with women and with um, underserved communities.
Yeah, the thing that's really interesting, one of the skill sets that I actually learned and earned as a teenager is one of the things that pays off the most for me professionally, even today. And that was when I was 14, I went and joined the speech and debate team. And not because I was Miss Go Out There. I've always heard someone who's had strong opinions, but I was pretty reserved. And I just wanted to be able to speak up a little bit better. And I look back now and I am so, so glad that I did that because 30, 40 years later, the ability to speak up for myself and or others and being an advocate, as well as to put real thoughts together that people will understand in a cohesive manner has been something that has served me well. Let's just put it this way. In my career, I have written a lot of speeches for my bosses. I've never had the title of speechwriter. So that's how well it has served me. I had a couple of positions where basically the leader told their other staff, yeah, Patricia's going to write that stuff for me. Don't use whoever we use as a speechwriter. That's a true story. I won't say where because it'll be very telling. But that's the kind of life I've lived. So my other duties as a signed list has grown long over the years, but that is with one of the skill sets that I'm so thankful that I did take the time to put myself out there for, because still today, especially with women, we are not good advocates for ourselves. We may be able to speak up well for others, particularly if there's a child involved, but we don't speak up well for ourselves in writing or vocally, verbally. So it's something that I try to incorporate into all of the work that I do.
And how do you see that play out for women?
In what terms?
So, say you've got a woman who's starting out in her
Hmm.
business. She's, where suddenly we're in these weird post-pandemic times where
Yes.
we're not just having to connect with people, but we're having to connect with, strangers
Right.
online from other places and other cultures. Um, how do we find either the mentors that we need to kind of help us speak for ourselves well, or find the kind of guidance and gumption in ourselves to do it?
My favorite thing to say is keep asking questions. That in and of itself is a method of a way of being a self advocate. We are too often told to, oh, well, just trust me, or why are you asking that? And challenged when we're asking questions, even if they're benign. I still get it today sometimes. And I have to tell somebody, particularly if it's a man, back up. I'm just asking a question because I need to fully understand. But because we are not generally taught to do that in a way that's supportive and that will appear to be taken as combative or contrary, by others, we don't do it, and you back down. And I'm going to always tell somebody, ask questions. It's literally the thing I teach both of my children, my son and my daughter, but my daughter even more so, because women will be challenged more than men throughout their workplace. and being able to ask questions intelligently, in a positive frame if it's necessary or not. I have literally in my lifetime, I've served on a number of various nonprofit boards in our community. And I could name at least 3 to 5 times where I was asked to serve on the board, and they didn't want me to have a preconception about what was going on. And so the code, when I knew there was a problem, was, well, we just need you to go ask some questions.
Ah.
And that was the code for there's a problem, but I had become well respected for being able to ferret out issues because I'll just keep asking questions till I get a good answer.
Uh-huh. And, I do feel, and this is, coming from somebody who taught, women's studies and taught, philosophy at the college level, at the undergrad level, that there's a lot of young women today who really think that it's all already been done.
Yeah.
That the war has already been won.
Yep.
That we have all the rights we need, that everything's equal and that everything's fine. And I remember once I was teaching a class, and I was teaching a class on ethics and business ethics. And we started going through income disparities. And this was, late 80s, early 90s. And the numbers aren't any better really today than they were then. And I looked at my class and I said to them, a lot of you feel like because you're going to have executive jobs, financial jobs, Wall Street jobs, tech jobs, that your income level is going to be the same as the man next to you. And I'm here to tell you that as you go up that ladder, the income disparities become even greater. And people are discouraged, sometimes contractually, from discussing their incomes. I'm like, so chances are, if you're working at McDonald's, you're making the same amount of money as the guy next to you.
Mm-hmm.
Chances are, if you're working at a law firm, you're working on Wall Street, you're working in any of these places, you're going to be doing twice the amount of work for less money than the guy next to you. And 10% as you start moving into earning 7 and 8 figures is a lot of money to be leaving on the table.
It's a lot of money anywhere along the way, especially if you are entering the workplace, degreed and moving up to go do whatever, particularly, like you said, in certain professional settings where it just becomes the disparity just becomes even greater. And I'm sitting here just shaking my head and laughing to myself because it's not that I had someone who always told me to go do that. It literally was between my training as an advocate at a young age, and I had some strong female role models, not inside my family, but externally, that I would look up to, and I just always ask questions. Because I'm like, if it doesn't make sense to me, I'm going to keep asking questions. And one of the things that I actually did in law school was there's the moot court board, which is basically, speech and debate for lawyers.
Right.
But it's in categories. And I ended up being the negotiations chair of that section when we were working through that. So I earned these other extra skills. And I recognize a lot of the experiences I've had are not something that everyone has had, but that does not mean that you can't do it, right? It means you put in the time, you learn, you put in the effort to gain that knowledge and gain that know-how. But that said, I would go in. I remember my first job out of law school, I was being courted by a certain state senator and who did not want to pay jack squat. I was like, I could go over to the AG's office and work 100 hours a week and get paid just as much or less, right? Like everyone knew that working at the AG's office, you got great litigation experience, but you didn't get paid anything. It was
Right.
expected. And so I literally was, traipsing around town with them for a couple of weeks. People actually thought I was already working for him. But I never accepted the offer because I was like, yeah, that's not enough money. I was like, I'm coming out of a private law school. I got bills to pay. And so I ended up starting at a nonprofit teachers association, which people would be like, well, it's nonprofit. I'm like, no, trust me, association work is good money, right? And that's where I started. The thing is, every time I moved after that, even when I moved into state level positions, I always moved with a significant raise. And people were like, how is that possible? It's like, because you have to take charge of your situation. Do not assume, women, we are the worst at it, that people are going to value you with dollars in the same way that they move their lips. They can talk a good game, but they're not going to necessarily follow up with the dollars because they're going to say, oh, we can't do that and we can't do this. And I'll be like, okay. But here's the thing. You have to be willing to walk away from some things.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be willing to walk away. And that's one of those things and people too often would just look at the dollar amount. And as we know, by today's standards, you cannot do that. Even, starting 20, 30 years ago, you needed to be looking at the full package. Because even let's say if something was on the lower end with the actual dollars in hand, if they were willing to pay for tuition reimbursement or professional development or other things, you have to consider that as part of your package. I will never forget when my first job out of law school, mind you, and there I was, and I was, as a lawyer, I was doing two things. They got a 2-for-1. I was hired in to do legislative work because of some time that I'd spent at the Capitol while I was a law student. And I passed the bar the first time around. So they're like, we got a 2-for. So I was practicing law for this teachers association as well as doing legislative work, flipping through the seasons.
Mm-hmm.
Well, as we move along, lawyers have continuing legal education requirements. And and so as a young lawyer, as a baby lawyer, that's what you always call me, I had the lowest amount of professional development funds.
Even
the
though
older
you need
attorneys.
the most professional development.
Now, did you catch that? Did you catch that?
Yeah.
And so the senior lawyers had a huge, had a healthy professional development, but I didn't, and I was confused by that. So I went to the boss, who was a woman and a lawyer. Never crossed her mind. And I said, so I have a question. How is it that I am the person with the least amount of experience and needing the most development, but I have the smallest budget? And she just looked at me and was like, well, because no one had ever asked that question.
Yes. This goes back to what we started with. Ask the questions. Ask them.
Needless to say, I got my professional development budget bumped as a baby lawyer. I was like
Right.
27 years old.
And it may very well be that they continued keeping that the baby lawyer funding up just
I'm almost
based on
positive they did.
entertaining that question.
Yep.
Like, oh,
This is how
well,
you
you're
can
right.
impact
Of
people coming
course.
behind you.
Yes.
It's not always the big rah rah or whatever. You can impact people coming behind you by the path that you lay in front for yourself.
Yes. Yes. What I see a lot of, we were talking about this a little bit before we started recording the show,
Mhm.
right? But what I see a lot of in the Pilates community is, number one, teachers who highly undervalue themselves, right? Who are like, well, but I'm just a Pilates teacher. I'm just teaching exercise. Like, what is that? Um, meanwhile, for a true legitimate like Pilates teacher training, you're talking probably $10,000
Yeah.
at least. You're talking 400 to 600 hours of work. You're talking exams. You're talking potentially the national, the PMA, the National Pilates Certification Exam, which would be like our equivalent of the bar, right?
Hmm.
Um, and then you're still talking about all the continuing education that you have to do after that, because you have to keep up on all of the new updates on things that are going on in medicine and physical medicine and all of these things, even if you're not using them every day with your clientele.
Right.
And we still have, these women who are so undervaluing themselves and so undervaluing their work.
Yes.
And when we pivoted online, it got even worse, right? Where I'm still seeing teachers online that are charging, like less than $100 for a private session.
Oh my God. That is a tough thing. It is, because even for someone like myself who has done a lot of work before going out on my own. So I didn't go out on my own till excuse me, 2010. And I went out doing legislative work, and I've shifted, down through the years. And there's a whole other mindset that has to be taken on when you have to kill what you eat, right? If you want to eat, you got to go get it yourself. And that takes on a whole different look. And then one of those things that I've just learned even more so in recent years is like that doesn't go away. It just, you peel back layers of how you learn to um, appreciate and acknowledge your own value and worth even more, and be able to express that. And it's a mindset shift, right? That's a lot of mindset work, especially when you get into doing the work like we do, when you're talking about coaching and personalized coaching and the rates and things like that. Because someone would say, well, I'm not asking you to be a lawyer. This is about, executive career level or professional advising for strategy. And my response to them, I've learned over the years, is first of all, you need to see Pepperdine Law School engraved on my forehead, right? And inside my head, because one of the things that anyone I work with is always going to get the benefit of what that law degree gave me. Not just about the law, because I'm not going to cross those boundaries. If we're working on a legal matter, we're working on a legal matter. But if we're not, but teaching critical thinking, strategic planning and thinking, uh, knowing how to ask the right questions at deeper levels, doing the research, all of that stuff. I couldn't take that out of me if I wanted to. You're going to get the benefit of that,
Yes.
of
Yes.
that
I mean,
knowledge. And the same thing with anyone who's got an expertise that they've invested time and or money in gaining needs to recognize that. So one of the things I used to, give on was people was like, oh, I just want to pick your brain about something. Well, now that's a red flag because I'll tell people in a hot minute, you can't afford to pick my brain. So reframe your ask.
Right.
Because
Right.
picking my brain now means you want something from me for free that you should be paying for.
Right.
And
Right.
that's not going to work. I get to make that decision, right? If that's something I'm going to do. But I had to learn to set those boundaries. Resetting your boundaries it's a whole other set of things. Man, that's a whole other
Well,
podcast.
and frankly, even though we're not necessarily going to get into that today, that's also a huge issue, obviously, within the Pilates and personal training world, right? Because clients are like, I want this, I want that, I want these times, I want that time. Why are you not available here? Why are you not available there? And I found that, the minute that I was able to set limits,
Mm-hmm.
really, and just say, like, this is when I work, these are the times I work. Here's your
Well,
link. Go schedule within those times. Thank you. People started respecting those times and those boundaries
yeah,
even more.
because you're
And
speaking up for yourself. Setting
right.
boundaries like that is a form of self-advocacy.
Yes, it is. And also knowing that, say as Pilates teachers, I'm not just teaching Pilates, right?
Right.
I'm helping people rebuild their bone density. I'm helping people get stronger after their hip replacement. I'm helping people continue to play golf when they have disc herniations and stenosis. It's,
Mm-hmm.
and these things become, what's important. So what becomes then important is that my clients reach a goal, right? Or reach different kind of pinnacles in what they're doing. And that's what the work is about.
Yeah.
The fact that I might use Pilates or use weight training or use whatever to get them to that place. But something that you kind of touched on for a moment there in what you had in law school, and which I of course had in my graduate work in philosophy, is critical reasoning.
Mm-hmm.
Number one, asking questions, continual arguing, continual debate, and um, and critical reasoning. And I don't know about you, but what I see in the world right now is distinct lacks of critical reasoning.
Oh my God.
Just
It's
I
horrible.
it's really ridiculous if if I see any more, post hoc arguments anymore. I can't. And it
Well,
all comes back to me when I'm reading these things or looking at these things in the culture. And, how do we navigate that? I mean, we really live in a non-critical reasoning, angry society
it makes
because
me
you
very
see it all
sad.
the
It makes me
time.
very
It's
sad.
just,
I tell people all the time when I was lobbying full time, we could be arguing about something and be on complete opposites sides of the table. When it comes to an issue, when it comes to a position by party or whatever. And just so people know, I've worked for both sides of the aisle, right? I've worked for
Mhm,
members of both sides of the aisle because my reputation was about my ability to do that,
mhm,
right? And if it became something that I thought was crossing a line with a value for me personally, then I told my boss, I don't know that I'm going to be able to do that because I think this is one of those things I'm just going to have to step away from. I didn't have to do that often because they knew that and they wouldn't even put me in that position because I was valued as a contributor to the process and what was going on. Now, that said, the years we could argue, be on opposite sides, But then when it came time to be over, we were like, what are you doing for dinner? Like, we could go grab dinner. We could go, sit down and have drinks or whatever, because you weren't insulting the person in the process of promoting, whatever piece of legislation, policy, whatever it was. That is not the case. That's
Right.
literally one of the reasons why I stopped doing the lobbying, because it was crossing that line and it wasn't fun anymore. The simple things became too much of a challenge because there was no mutual respect. It was, well, you're not on my side, then you are against me, and we can't have anything. We can't have anything in common, and
Right.
that's false.
Now,
That is
one of the
very false.
things that I've been striving to do forever within the Pilates world is that pretty much prior to the trademark lawsuit,
Mm-hmm.
um, there was just Pilates. There were like probably 500 Pilates studios in the entire world. And there were different styles of Pilates. Joseph Pilates taught some different
Mm-hmm.
people. They went to different places. They created, some of their own things, but still kind of stayed within the work. And everybody appreciated that. We could all get together, we could all chat. And it was even sometimes like just looking at these stylistic differences, where you would be like, oh, that's interesting. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I learned it this way and I teach this and whatever. So then, we kind of move forward, we get through the lawsuit, and suddenly after the lawsuit, we have created now the categories of classical and contemporary. Right?
Mm-hmm.
Classical being supposedly teaching exactly what Joe taught at a specific, period of his life. And then contemporary being
Everything
sometimes
else.
that and sometimes, anything else. So, and it immediately turned into like an attack zone.
Yeah.
Immediately turned into an attack zone. And it's always been interesting for me because I do both.
Mm-hmm.
I got
Mm-hmm.
classical certifications. I have contemporary certifications. I like all of it. But it for me in a way was kind of like taking the prelim exams in grad school where you can do whatever you want with your philosophy career after this, but we really need to know that the pre-Socratics and Plato and Aristotle and
Mm-hmm.
Descartes and Kant and whatever. Like, we need to know that, and that some logic and some informal logic and critical
Mm-hmm.
reasoning, because that's stuff you're going to have to teach anyway, whatever else it is you're going to do. So for me, I've always kind of gone about if there are teachers out there who don't know a lot about like actually the classical quote unquote stuff, the stuff that Joe actually taught the way he taught it, I'm like, you should know that, but not as a value judgment,
Right.
not because you suck or your clients aren't doing well, just because, you're teaching his work. So maybe kind of know what that background is.
It's a
And
part of
for
you being an expert in your field.
exactly. And for me, that's worked well, moving forward, because then I've been able to kind of own both of those sides of what I do and say, yes, there's value here and there's value here. And if we can just kind of bring these together so we're all serving our clients well and everyone's happy and we're making money, good for us. And, instead what I see is a lot of this backbiting, suing, like craziness going on instead of people just getting together, supporting each other, supporting the work, and serving their clients.
Or calling a stinking truce, right? I
Or
mean,
just
like, you're,
call a truce. Just be like,
because
come on.
sometimes you're not going to agree unless there's something that is fundamentally of value for you where you're like, I don't know that we're going to be able to interact. Most of the time, things are not that black and white. Most of the time. There's a whole lot of gray in the world, but people
Mm-hmm.
are acting like everything is black and white, and it's damaging a lot of relationships. It's damaging how they approach things professionally as well. I am surprised over the last couple of years not just in personal relationships, but in professional ones, where I've seen people take an approach to various issues over the last few years. And I'm like, well, that's interesting. I've known that person for 20 years and we ain't never had that level of conversation for me to get that out. Right. And, and what I did not do was automatically go, oh, well, I can't deal with that person anymore. I took it in, I acknowledged it. I knew that there was something that made me uncomfortable or problematic for me. And if it rose to that level, then maybe I said something to them. Or if it didn't, but I knew this is just going to be a natural parting of the ways, then maybe that's it. But it didn't have to be a big, huge, nasty thing. Because
Right.
here's the thing, especially as women, we don't have the stinking time for that crap. We will allow people to suck up our energy. And when you have to give your energy to junk, that means you don't have the energy to move forward on those purposeful, authentic goals that you have to propel you forward for your personal and professional career, your community, your family. And that's a lesson we all have to learn at some point in time. And it comes in levels, sure. But the last few years has really accelerated that on a number of levels.
Yeah, I
And it's
fully agree.
unfortunate, but it's become a part of our life. But it's that whole thing is my husband always has the saying, I always shake my head at him, but he'll be like, well, what's in you will come out of you. And I think we've seen a lot of things come out of some people that we didn't know was in them, right? And here's the thing, because we're still on point in case that someone was wondering. When it comes to you speaking up for yourself and being an advocate for what you believe, how you want to support others, all of this is still relevant. Because you
Yes.
don't have to just take crap that's tossed your way. You don't, right? There are different ways to handle it. It doesn't always have to be some major confrontation. Because again, is it really worth all that energy? Most of the time, no. You can
Right.
just do a nice little clip and call it a day. you know? But it still ties back together. Like I like to say all the time, Lynda, you've heard me say this, we are not flat Stanleys. Anyone who tries to pretend that we are one-dimensional beings, they're just being ignorant or stupid or both. We are not. We are multidimensional people and beings living in a very complex world. So quit trying to make it simple, that it's black and white. There are things about things that can be simplified, but quit trying to make complex issues black and white. It's not that easy.
No, it's
So
not.
it's a matter of growth and being willing to do the work to grow, to take you to the next level and recognize when to say when and when it's time to move on, or shift. Because guess what, you're going to have great people who are there to support you at that next level. Don't believe the lie is that, oh, you're done for and there's not going to be anyone there for you. Trust you me, I could tell stories about how I have a whole new collection of friends, Lynda of whom is one of them, based on a lot of shifts and changes in the last few years. And the people that I rely on now do not look like who I relied on even 5 or 6 years ago. And it's not a bad thing. It's just called life.
Right. Right. And you may even find that the folks who you connected with, 20, 30 years ago suddenly come
Resurface.
back and
Yep.
resurface and do that. Um, I was very involved in the United States Student Association and the Student Association of the State University of New York. I hear that the USSA is actually coming back,
Mm.
which I'm kind of excited about because I think it's definitely needed. But we used to go lobby on the Hill twice a year. We used to, for student concerns. Especially when it was, Supreme Court judges were coming on, And it's the same thing. I mean, I used to sit in these congresses with students, from all over the country with different political views and different, issues that we kind of needed dealt with in different state university systems. But at the end of the day, we would all go out for drinks and have a great time. And we could be sitting there till 3 o'clock in the morning, arguing with each other around with the Roberts rules. And and then be out the next night hanging out because we understood that those things were different,
Yeah.
and that we could do the work and we could do the advocacy work that we needed to do for ourselves and for our constituents, and then still be able to hang out with the other side, and that was all okay. And I think that I think it's great that folks like you are doing this kind of coaching work online for women being empowered to network, for women being empowered to speak for themselves, for
Yeah.
women being empowered to move forward in their businesses. So how can folks get in touch with you, Patricia?
Oh, well, Lynda, I'm just about everywhere.
I know you are. I know.
But I am on LinkedIn. I have a Facebook business profile. I have a personal page. I'd prefer you connect with the business profile, and Instagram. And I have a YouTube channel. So all of those things. But if you're like, want to go one place, it's Patricia V. Hayes.com is my website, and it has links to all of those locations and the things that you can learn about what I've been working on, what I'm about to work on. I'm about to be shifting some things around again, and just really excited about that and I'm glad we had this opportunity to chat because Lynda knows that I have become well known for all the networking stuff and building professional relationships authentically. That's really what I want to focus on. But one of the things I realized how it all started was about me helping women to be more empowered from the tough transitions they've had in their work and their business, their jobs. And all of that professional relationship building came from that. And one of the things I'm doing now is kind of reconnecting all of that because it matters. For women, when I'm coaching women, they may come to me at first for like, I need to get this job and how can I connect with the right people to do it? But what we end up talking about first is, why are you talking down about yourself and why don't you have enough confidence to go pick up the phone and call 5 people this week? I mean, like, those are literal conversations I've had. And it's because of the situation I've gone through. And that's when I'm like, you know what? We need to get back to the foundations of helping people remember to speak up for themselves, learn how to, or relearn how to be an advocate for themselves in all aspects of their lives. And that does not mean it's something contentious. Being an advocate for yourself there's no negative connotation. And a lot of times women are charged with that. If we speak up or whatever, then we're being aggressive rather than assertive,
Right.
and all of that
Right.
for stupid language. But guess what? You still need to do it, because if you have goals that are going to take you to the next level, you have to be able to have that confidence to be able to step up, speak up for yourself, and put yourself in rooms where you might be uncomfortable at first, but that are going to connect you with the right people.
Right. Right. And guys, like Patricia would never actually say this because she does not speak this way, but that I do, that just because you want to be an advocate for yourself does not make you an asshole.
And this is true. It's true.
I knew you would agree. I just know you would never say that phrase.
Oh my God, it's so funny.
And this is what I mean, guys. Like, I curse in front of Patricia all the time. She never curses in front of me because she doesn't, because it's not her thing.
I don't know. Maybe you just caught me all my good days.
This could be. me.
Ah,
Ah.
I didn't realize I had been behaving that much with you, Lynda. Oh my goodness. I have to go back and I
Am I
don't wanna huh?
am I inspiring good behavior?
I don't know about inspiring. It's making me question. I'm like, what have our conversations been like? Because I know I can have a moment or two,
You can.
but
You can. All right, folks. I highly, highly encourage you to get in touch with Patricia, whether you are doing it on an individual level, or whether your studio or your organization really needs some help and really kind of reconnecting with who you are, with your worth, with your importance, and with what you're here to do in this world. So thank you so much for joining me, Patricia. It's such a good
always,
time.
always. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
Thank you so much for listening to the Pilates Goddess podcast. Music brought to you by Nerd Salad. Please leave a review on Apple Podcasts, especially if you liked it. And please like, share, and subscribe wherever you listen to your podcasts. Thanks.